Hi, it's Mark from Top Local Lead Generation. We're here with Mr. Bernie Pawlik of the award-winning Pawlik Automotive, just winners again of voted by their customers as best auto repair in Vancouver. How you doing today, Bernie?
I'm good.
So I have a forced smile on my face. We're going to talk about VW TDIs. And I'm the owner of one of these cars. When we last talked about these, we both had high praise for these vehicles, and it turns out it was an illusion. They're very fuel efficient, but they're also polluting like crazy because of what Volkswagen's done. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what happened, what's gone on.
Yeah, so well, essentially the TDI was sold as a green diesel car. It had everything that people wanted: power, performance, excellent fuel economy, and low emissions, low pollution, which is high pollution is kind of a common thing in diesels. Fuel economy and performance. Well, performance wasn't there in the past, but now it is. So they supposedly combined all three, but they had a few tricks up their sleeve, and the emissions weren't what we expected them to be.
So how was VW able to make the emissions low on an emission test and yet have cars that are emitting up to 40 times the regulated amount of nitrous oxide?
Well, what they did some interesting kind of crafty software that they were able to detect when the vehicle was on a dynamometer being tested for emissions. The vehicle, I guess they used, from what I've read, a combination between a GPS system, so they knew the vehicle wasn't moving anywhere, and only the two front wheels were driving the vehicles. So the vehicle was stationary. So that set the computer up saying, "Hey, this vehicle is not going anywhere. It's being emission tested, so it would perform for best for emissions." But as soon as the car started moving out on the road, then it would go back to its other programming, better fuel economy and performance.
So there's lots and lots of diesel cars and trucks on the road. How does everybody else deal with nitrous oxide, fuel economy, and engine performance? Those sort of three ultimate kind of things that we all want out of our vehicles.
Well, what everyone else does, and actually Volkswagen does on certain models, but not the 2-liter engines that they sold in North America, is they use a urea system. It's a tank with it's an extra chemical, and it's injected into the exhaust system into a special catalytic converter, and that eliminates the oxides of nitrogen. I guess Volkswagen was originally planning on using the Mercedes Blue Tech system back around 2005. At least some people at Volkswagen wanted to use that, but others decided, let's develop our own system. So they worked on developing their own system, and it obviously wasn't as good as didn't turn out to be as good as they thought. But the urea is an added, there's an added cost. It's very minimal, and there's a bit of an added hassle in terms of you have to add an extra fluid to the vehicle every once in a while, but it's really not a lot to manage. But that's how everyone else does it. Even heavy trucks use a urea system for emission reduction.
So going forward, what kind of options does VW have? I guess it's VW and Audi and Seat, and there's a bunch of companies actually that use these same motors.
Yes, exactly. Well, as far as I see it, they've got one of two options. They either reprogram the vehicle so it runs all the time on the emission for the reduced emission standards. Of course, the cost of this is going to be lower fuel economy and performance, which is why people bought the cars, for the performance and the economy. So there's going to be a loss of those two items, but the emissions will remain intact. Or secondly, they can add a urea system, which will be extremely expensive for Volkswagen. It'll probably take up a bit of trunk space in your vehicle, and then you'll have to add the urea to the vehicle as well. Again, as I said, the cost for urea is really minimal. Unless you buy it at the Mercedes dealer or something, I know it's pretty expensive, but otherwise it's cheap.
So do we just give up on the idea of clean diesel?
I don't think so. It seems like it works with the urea system, but it's obviously not quite as like I say, the illusion is somewhat broken with the way this Volkswagen's worked out, that you can have it all and it's simpler. So yeah, no, I think the clean diesel works. And I think you and I have talked about, there's always biodiesel as well, which is much even a step cleaner than petroleum diesel.
Well, it's non-polluting. There is no nitrous oxide emissions.
Yeah.
So, because all your emission is water, basically. What about, so I guess the big question is, how does Volkswagen, why did they think they could get away with it? Why did they have the nerve to pull off such a stunt? I guess we can't really know for sure, but what are your expert kind of opinion on that? Why do you think they did it?
Well, I think they, as I was saying earlier, they were going to use the Mercedes Blue Tech system, and they decided that, what I say they, whoever in the company decided, no, let's do our own system. So they obviously did their research and they did their development and found that their system didn't quite match what they expected. And so they made a choice. Let's just fudge it on the emission test, because there's probably a cost factor involved. I think you and I were talking earlier too, like the Jettas and a lot of these cars, maybe not the Audi, but the Jettas are sort of, they're a lower end car. They're cheaper. They're a cheaper car, so they don't have the margins to just go, oh, we screwed up, let's just spend an extra $5,000 on the car and put a urea system in. They probably started with a few cars and they got so deep into it they just kept on going with the fudging, as I like to say. So
you mentioned that other vehicles are using urea type systems. So what was, I know that my dad's old diesel truck used to get really good mileage, and I know that from talking to you that some of the newer ones for a time there didn't get as good mileage. So what was going on there?
Yeah, so I mean, sort of in the late 2000s, I think it was kind of a hard time for the diesel industry, because the U.S. put some very stringent emission regulations that the manufacturers had to meet. A lot of American trucks, if we just move away from Volkswagens for a minute, they used, they went from having minimal emission equipment now to have to add catalytic converters and items for NOx reduction, and it just threw the gas mileage in the toilet. They went from 20 miles a gallon on a lot of big trucks to 8 miles a gallon, which is extremely annoying for a lot of owners. And there's a lot of problems associated. The diesels just weren't as reliable. And I might add, I mean, we blame Volkswagen, as a corporation for doing these kind of things, but there are a lot of diesel truck owners who have removed their own emission equipment. It's completely illegal, but we sort of think, well, it's my own truck, I'll just do what I want, and it doesn't work right. And there are companies around that sell, catalytic, exhaust systems to bypass the catalytic converters, and there's software made to bypass the whole system. So, I mean, there's a lot of vehicles out there that are not just Volkswagens, but people do it individually, and companies do it, to make money to remove the emission equipment.
And then when there was what was the change? Because that's kind of resolved itself with the newer vehicles. Is that right?
Yeah. So going forward, yeah. So they basically, the newer generation of diesels, at least American trucks, and pretty much all the diesel vehicles out on the road, except for the Volkswagens, all use a urea system. And so that gives you the best combination between, you can make an engine that has good power, good fuel economy, and then just deal with the excess NOx emissions in the exhaust system with the urea and the catalytic converter. It seems to work out well.
So any final thoughts?
I mean, sometimes it seems innocuous. Oh, well, it's just a little more pollution, whatever. But I mean, there are statistics. I mean, there are people actually out there dying because of this. It's not like being shot with a bullet or being run over by a car where the results are immediate. It's slow, it's hidden. I mean, I don't know anyone who's died from car pollution. I mean, most of us don't, but it's out there. I was just reading, apparently, say in London, there's 3,000 people a year die from the pollution of diesel exhaust. So I know London's kind of a dirty city and it's big, but the results are real. So those are kind of my final thoughts. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what Volkswagen does going ahead. They've got a big hill to climb to fix this problem and restore their credibility with their customers, which is going to probably take a long time. And also the V6 Volkswagens, by the way, if you're wondering about those, those diesels are all fine. There's no issues with those. It's just the 2 liters in North America that you need to be concerned about. And we'll do another hangout. We'll talk more about what specific things you can expect if you have a TDI Jetta and what you might need to do going forward.
Awesome. So we've been talking with Mr. Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver. They're an award-winning shop, 15 times voted best auto repair in Vancouver. Bernie's a worldwide expert on auto repair and auto maintenance, and you can reach them at pawlikautomotive.com or give them a call. Book your next appointment today, 604-327-7112. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. Talk to you soon.